What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make when it comes to money management or even just investing, anything around money?
Well, number one, no clear goals. Investing without clarity, investing without goals, investing without having a real sophisticated strategy first. I also would say not taking any risk. A lot of people have just money sitting in the bank. It's okay now, maybe if you're getting 4 or 5%, it's not terrible, but it's not useful. Inflation is high. So most people have sat on money for a long time and they wait and they wait and they wait and they miss opportunities. You can't sit on the sidelines and get to financial freedom. You cannot save your way. You cannot earn your way to financial freedom. You have to invest your way there. Another mistake is on the other extreme, which is taking too much risk. I do see a lot of people who get caught up in these private investment deals, private equity, venture capital, and that's almost all they do because they get excited about the new deal, the story, the sizzle. And great investing most of the time is really boring. It doesn't have a sexy story that you're excited about. It just compounds and grows, kind of like a farmer out there just working the fields. Eventually, the harvest comes after patience and after work. So people get excited and they chase down these big opportunities with these really high promising returns. And most of the time, it doesn't work out. And so they get discouraged and maybe they don't invest or they just switch strategies or they put all their money in cash and they really never took advantage of that long-term compounding effect.
I'd love to dig in. I know you just shared like you can't really save or even earn your way to financial freedom. Why is that?
You can't earn your way to financial freedom because you cannot do it with salary or wages or profits. It has to be through investments. So people will raise their standard of living and have that lifestyle creep regardless of how much they earn. I remember meeting with a surgeon in Newport Beach, California here, 2004, 2005. He was making 7 figures back then. He thought he was going to be able to retire at a younger age. And when we really peeled the onion, we looked at his financials and he had no chance. He didn't even have a chance to retire at normal age, let alone 5-7 years earlier like he hoped, because he had ramped up the expenses. He'd ramped up excessive consumer debt, fancy cars, second homes, and just had gotten used to that lifestyle of spending that there was no chance he could make his way up without cutting a lot of expenses. So you can't earn your way there. So people think, well, I'll start investing when I make more money. I just need to get to X in my income or my profits, and then suddenly I'll start investing more and I'll get serious about it. But that's not going to work. You have to treat your $100,000 responsibly to ever have a chance at $1 million. And the same goes for 10 million or 100 million. You're not going to get smarter about wealth by getting more wealth. You're only going to get more wealth when you're smart with what you already have.
I've seen this firsthand. I mean, you and I have even talked about this, that I've been in rooms where there's 8-figure entrepreneurs that have run 8-figure organizations for multiple decades and they don't have financial freedom, which is just baffling to me. And yet it's not uncommon. What are some of the other mistakes? Not just the individual, but it seems like the partner that you choose in life seems to have a big impact on financial freedom and just even other decisions.
Yeah, massive impact. Been married almost 23 years. I'm very grateful because I didn't know anything. When I got married, I was so young and dumb and in love. I was a college student. So very grateful that it turns out my wife and I both chose wisely. I think she chose wisely, but choosing who you partner with, whether it's for financial advice, most importantly, who you live with, who your spouse or partner is. I mean, that's critical. Their mindset towards growth. There are a lot of business owners whose spouses do not believe in growth or believe that maybe trying to aim for too much money is bad. It's going to corrupt them when really money is a magnifier. So money in itself is not going to ruin you. It's going to make you more of who you already are. Another big mistake I see is overpaying for the investments or the financial advice you're getting. Look, there are 500,000, 600,000-ish financial professionals out there. There's a lot of great people out there at every level, right? There are people at every level. So you might be matched up with someone who's not at the right level or not just in the right lane. If you're training for a 5K, it's not the same as someone training for an ultra marathon. So once you have a way different coach with different skill sets, if you're training for a marathon or an ultra marathon or an Ironman versus a 5K versus I just need to get up off the couch and walk a little bit around the block. So I think not really understanding who you're taking financial advice from makes a difference. The cost of what you pay makes a difference. Our industry is very confusing on purpose. I worked at Merrill Lynch, one of the big Wall Street banks for 9 years. And the stuff I saw was pretty wild back in 2002, 2003, in the very beginning, the lack of transparency. And I think there's still a lot of that in the Wall Street world.
Yeah. So there's going to be people listening that, of course, are going to go the DIY route. They're going to want to try to do it themselves. And I want to speak to them. But I also want to talk about just how do you choose the right expert? Because for any lawyers that are listening, they know firsthand, like choosing an attorney from a client's perspective is also very, very difficult, right? There's an oversaturation, if you will, of legal options. Most of them, let's say in the personal injury space, are work on contingency, so it's free to work with them, pretty much. Everyone says they're the best. Everyone's got the same awards. They're all super lawyers, so consumers are faced with the same challenges. So I'm just curious, how would you advise people be able to kind of separate the signal from the noise?
You got to look for the super advisors. I'm just kidding. I would say you need to make sure they work with people just like you. That may sound like really simple, but I don't think most clients ever check that. You don't want to be the biggest or the smallest, and you want to make sure they work with people like you and probably slightly above you. I think you want to work with financial people who give comprehensive advice and do a lot of question asking beforehand. A lot of people in our industry don't do a lot of question asking. They've got products to sell. They've got things that they want to push from the firms they're working for. I think an important part is looking for a fiduciary. I mean, that's a term you guys all know in the legal field, but 4% to 5% of financial professionals are fiduciaries, complete independent fiduciaries, which means 95 to 96% are not. That's astonishing, yet nobody talks about it. And guess what? The fiduciary standard was almost going to be implemented as a minimum requirement for all financial professionals a few years back. Guess what? There were tens of millions of dollars lobbied for against that. By whom? By the big financial firms, big insurance companies that have huge sales forces across the country. That 95%. So of course, why would they fight the fiduciary standard? Why would they not want conflict-free financial advice to be available to everyone? It's not as lucrative.
Right.
So my personal biased opinion, because I'm a fiduciary, but I wasn't before. I was at Merrill Lynch. So by nature, I was working at the huge bank. I was working at the big investment company. We were not allowed to be fiduciaries because that's where we worked. But I eventually kind of learned after being there 9 years, like, okay, this is one route. I'm going to go the independent route, which is going to be different, but it's going to be a lot easier for me to give advice to everyone and just tell them what I actually think without the restrictions and constraints of a big bank with their own agenda. So I personally think you can find great fiduciaries who have some credentials. I don't think there's any like special credential that means way more than something else, but who've got some education, who have some experience, who work with people just like you, who you get along with, who ask lots of questions, who are transparent about all the costs. I think that's critical. Who talk about goals and things, who don't promise investment returns specifically. I think that's a little bit of a risk there, is that people try to forecast and overpromise, and that causes people to make a lot of bad mistakes. So hopefully those are some helpful tips to finding a good financial professional.